Welcome to Engage and Secure, the podcast redefining the future of cybersecurity by focusing on its most critical element, people. Powered by OutThink, the world's first AI-driven human risk management platform, we bring you thought-provoking discussions with industry leaders, innovators, and experts. I'm your host, Fred Manano. Welcome back to Engage and Secure, where we spotlight the minds reshaping cybersecurity. Today's episode is an exciting one, and it's a first for us, and it's going to be a powerful one. We're joined by two women who haven't just contributed to cybersecurity, but they've truly shaped its architecture. Our first guest helped architect the U.S. National Cybersecurity Strategy. She shaped policy from the White House. She's led product security at Google. She's led AI and resilience services at CrowdStrike. She's advised global AI councils. And now she's the founder and principal of CAS Strategies, a boutique advisory firm that helps governments, mission-driven orgs, global enterprises navigate the complex intersection of cybersecurity, resilience, and emerging tech. She's also the voice behind the standout Substacks, Command Line with Camille and Net Zero Day, which I've not been invited on yet, by the way, which explore the human policy and systematic dimensions of digital security. And Camille's career is not just influential, it's formative to how this field has come to understand power, policy, and human risk. And she's also a great person and funny. So welcome, Camille Stewart Gloster. It's great to see you. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you, Fred. What a great introduction. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. You deserve it. And I could have been even a longer one, but I'm glad you're here. So our second guest has spent 30 years at the intersection of defense, research, and human-centered design. So over 2 decades at the U.S. Department of Defense and NSA, studying systems from inside out, first as a computer scientist, then as a voice for human-centered security, and now at NIST, she leads the charge in translating research into the standards that shape our digital defenses. Dr. Julie Haney, it's great to see you.
Thanks.
How you doing?
Good. Great to be on. Thanks.
I'm glad to have you. And so together they represent institutions that don't just respond to threats, but they set the rules of the game at the end of the day. And more importantly than all that, they're both amazing human beings. And I'm sure that you're going to see that through this episode. So, of course, I'm sorry, leave best to last, but joining us again, someone who believes that people are the true perimeter and has built an entire company on the belief that we need to rethink human security, the founder and CEO of OutThink, none other than Flavius Plesu. What's happening, Flavius?
It's great to be here, man. How are you?
I'm good, and it's really good. It's really good to see everybody, and all of you. Thank you for being here. And like I said, this really is a special one, and especially because it's been like we've been waiting to do this over and over. We talked months ago, then I got sick, so we finally are here, and I'm really glad that this is happening. So, we're honored, like all of us are honored to join the mic with you guys. Great people. Most importantly, people that really believe in not just keeping our country and our world safe, but about diversity in the field, about bringing good people into it, and about really helping human beings, because this is about human beings, really help, protect our country, our world, and families, etc. So we want to talk now to begin, not with credentials. Actually, you know what, guys? Sorry, I'm going to stop for a second because I'm going to ask another question, a side thing. So let's start with Camille. What's up? What's going on in your life? What are you up to? What are your projects? What's new?
Was that
a loaded question? Come on,
that was a bit loaded.
That's all right.
I am working with a number of companies from Fortune 500 to startups on cybersecurity, AI governance, emerging tech, all of those things. But some of the fun things I'm working on, I kept getting inquiries from parents about how they navigate the tech space, how they teach their kids cybersecurity, how they think about technology use. And so that Substack you mentioned, Command Line with Camille, I'm doing a summer series for parents that has age-focused guidance on just how to engage technology, how to think about it, the mental models they should use, and really kind of translating this human-centered security concept to everyday people so that they can have kitchen table conversations. It'll wrap up at the beginning of September with a toolkit that parents can take with them. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm also working on a book in this vein.
What's the book? What's the book?
It's focused on just empowering people to understand the levers of power that they have to influence the trajectory of technology and to feel more agency and authority rather than feeling like they have to take technology as it comes.
I need to hang out with you more. I need to. It's very therapeutic. No, I actually think I need to hang out with you more.
Yeah. The fun thing about running your own business is that you can take all the things that you've done and translate them into ways that, you know, are actionable and people-centric. And that's kind of what I'm doing on the side is, you know, I'm helping these organizations. I'm understanding the challenges that they're having and the choices that they're making. I also did that in government. And now I'm saying, how do we apply that to people very directly? So it's been a lot of fun.
And I think we're going to keep talking about that real quick before I go to usual. You were just on the Las Vegas Strip. Come on, what was going on there? Your summer camp or something, right? Right?
Something called Hacker Summer Camp, which is not.
Right.
Excuse me, which is not as fun as it sounds. It's 8 conferences, but Vegas was for Hacker Summer Camp, which is about 8 cybersecurity conferences that happen concurrently and back to back. So it was kind of a nerd's dream to just talk cybersecurity all day long and kind of see all the people who, whether or not they live in your city, you probably don't get to see very often, and just talk about kind of the work and what's happening. So I dashed in and dashed out. I didn't stay for all of the 8 conferences, but it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad, and you. I always, you know, I pay close attention on LinkedIn to your stuff, and you really do important things, and cyber is protecting the world, and that, you know, that's, we all have to do that, but it's what you bring to it. And seriously, and don't call up. Are you going to be okay? All right, gonna make sure. But really, I, you know, followed you from the White House, and that's when I really, you know, saw what you were doing. So thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do. Now, Dr. Haney, Julie. I know you've done great. You got some great things going on too. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, Camille mentioned that she's been doing some work to kind of translate cybersecurity for regular people because it applies to all of us. And actually, one of the projects I'm working on right now does have to do with cybersecurity communications and the terminology and the jargon that we tend to use in the field that comes so naturally to us and is so obvious to those of us who have been working in this space for a while. And how the general public, folks that don't have any special expertise in IT or cybersecurity, have no idea what we're talking about. And so we did a survey, and we're not done with the analysis yet, but kind of sneak peek, you know, common terms that we use, people just don't really understand. They don't really get the context. And so we have to be careful about how we communicate things and understand that we might have to give some scaffolding when we're talking about certain terms, and even terms that we, you know, things like malware, which is a very common term in cybersecurity. There were a lot of people that thought that was a good thing. Some surprising type of results. So we're excited about that, and hopefully can give that to people that do communicate cybersecurity concepts to the general public and to just kind of, you know, regular employees to help them to reach those employees better and to use language that is more digestible for that. Then the big thing that we're really starting right now is, our group has been doing a lot of research into human-centered cybersecurity for years, and we really want to codify that more. So one of the things that we've been hearing a lot in a lot of the community outreach that we do is that there's no standard description of what human-centered cybersecurity really is. And so people have different ways of thinking about it, and some just equate it to security awareness training when that's really only a piece of it. And so, you know, we want to develop a community standard for what's the scope of human-centered cybersecurity. What are the goals? What is the clear value proposition so that decision makers will realize, hey, we really do need to address this human element. And then eventually along the way, we want to come up with some measurable outcomes and some metrics so that people can help organizations to be able to tell whether these kind of human centered approaches and interventions are actually being successful. So we're going to be kicking off some efforts. We're gathering some Kevin's
right.
talking to a lot of people now, and then we'll kick off some more public engagement to start to really map these concepts into existing cybersecurity frameworks to show the relationship there.
Well, I know that Flavius, I mean, you're working on some of that stuff too. You should get together and talk. You guys are right working on some white papers, and you're always doing stuff.
I realized back in 2019 that, hey, security standards out there, they didn't quite address human-centric security. Our chief scientific advisor, Professor Angela Sase, she spent a lifetime researching human-centric security, human-computer interaction, and still there's no content for practitioners out there to go, right, I'm going to implement human-centric security. How do I go about it? So what I wanted was a framework. It was an article that went out in the Forbes in 2019. We joined forces with some universities, some organizations, and we've made a start. And we didn't get far, there's still a massive opportunity.
Love to get your input into the process.
Yeah. I just came back from Chicago. So last week I was there at the SANS Summit. The community is great. People who are really, really passionate about the work that they do. There's a real opportunity, and I'm really excited. Can't wait to get into the conversation today. And now, Fred, we can.
All right. No, we can. It's great, and this is a great. It's great to talk with this stuff. We also have to get to know each other in the cyber community, and I think it's so important. The more voices that come in, especially when it comes to human-centered cybersecurity. So anyway, okay, I started earlier before I got off, a little on tangent, that I didn't want to begin with credentials, but with character. So Camille, of course, you've stood at the intersection of policy, technology, equity at the highest levels, but before the White House, before Google, before SaaS strategies, CrowdStrike, before the titles, I want to ask you a question because I think this is so important. It tells about who we really are. Who shaped you early, and what, personal or formative moments kind of pointed you towards this path? Because you didn't just jump into cyber, obviously. And
yeah, my path was very much shaped by my parents. They're immigrants, so I had a very global view early on. My dad's a computer scientist, so I had technology very early. And I used to sit in the back of his computer science classes, even in kindergarten, and follow along with what he was teaching his classes as he was teaching at a local community college. And so I had technical acumen very early. He put me in Russian and
really
kindergarten. Yeah, I don't remember any of it, but this was the track he had me on. I say all that to say,
right.
But then I got it in my head that I needed to be a lawyer.
Right.
And I started making them sign contracts for everything. And
How old were you?
Investigating the law. Yes. I mean, they made promises on grades, on this, on that. And I was like, oh, okay, sign here, initial here. And I'll circle back at the time that this contract comes to fruition. And so my academic career was this journey to figure out how I blended these two passions. So when I went to law school, there weren't a lot of cyber law classes,
right.
Or focus on cybersecurity or the evolution of emerging tech. So I kind of went thinking, well, maybe I'll have to protect other people's technology. Maybe I can't actually use my technical skills. I'll just be a lawyer and do intellectual property law. And I was recruited to a cybersecurity company after law school, and quickly realized that, it is very important for there to be lawyers who do the compliancy parts of cybersecurity law. But that is not where the fun is, at least to me. And so I quickly realized that what I wanted to do was use my understanding of systems in the world and people and create this socio-technical perspective to apply to cybersecurity challenges. And so very quickly within that organization, it was called Cyvalence. It's now part of ZeroFox, if people are familiar. I was building programs and leading the legal work, but also co-managing the Security Operations Center and doing a number of things and really getting to exercise both muscles. And so my career has really been this forging of a path that is unique to me because I have this technical skill set that isn't obvious on my resume, but this legal skill set that makes people want to put me in a certain box. Like, be
I
on the
hate
legal
boxes,
team
by
or
the
the
way.
policy team.
Uh,
I hate boxes.
I really hate
Um,
boxes.
yeah, so I've had a lot of fun in my career ping-ponging back and forth from doing national policy to going back and leading technical teams. And so I find myself kind of going back and forth between the two and creating this perspective that's pretty unique.
I wanted to ask you. So you were at DHS during the Obama administration, right? And so
I
you were
was.
working on global infrastructure security, and I guess that was an early wake up call that tech failure often stems from. You just kind of talked to governance blind spots and human variables, right? Not code necessarily.
Yeah,
Although,
I mean, that time, President Obama decided he really wanted to hone in on cybersecurity. So we were
right,
writing the presidential policy directive that organizes the federal government on significant cyber incidents and the Cybersecurity National Action Plan and a number of other things that kind of helped organize the nation around cybersecurity as a challenge. And what was fun for me was I got to bring this perspective of a private sector actor because everyone else
right,
on the team was very focused on the government lens. And I had just spent so much time thinking about the corporate perspective or the individual perspective, and being able to bring that to the dialogue and to the work was really helpful and important. And I think was a part of a journey that, we have gone on as a nation, as a industry, to recognize how important it is to collaborate. At that time, we were really talking about threat indicator sharing, information sharing, and public-private partnership was like very high level. It was,
right.
I'm going to send some indicators across to you, you'll send some across to me, and everybody was dissatisfied because nobody got the depth that they wanted. And I think we've evolved to a much more robust, and we'll see what that turns into in this moment, but in my last stint in government, it evolved into a real collaboration where industry was helping us shape policy, helping us write the strategy, refining that,
That
bringing problems to the table. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun bringing those perspectives together.
And I think it has to work that way, by the way. I mean, the best things that
I
have ever
agree.
happened in this country have always been when private and public come together. I mean, when it works, it works. And we're seeing more of that, but it always kind of vacillates. But one other thing, and I want to get to Julie and, of course, Flavius, but, you have said, and talk about it, read stuff that, and that you were like, that you were in many rooms, right? When you were younger, especially, right? Only black woman, right? Probably the only woman in general, right? Black and right. And so you never were, I mean, it was early, like that was that sharpened your drive probably in many ways to build like inclusive frameworks, right? I mean, you really have been not just race, kids, everything. I mean, you just always engaging with different groups of people that may not fit into that box of, well, the white male and cyber, but I mean, that's kind of been what you've always been focused on in a sense, right?
Yeah, I think I realized early on that because my perspective was a little bit different, I could identify things in a different way or had a new lens or a new angle on how to solve something. My perspective brought a richness to the conversation that was honed by my lived experiences, honed
Right.
by my different academic experiences, lived experiences, and just how I saw these tools and technology showing up in my world. And so, in recognizing how that changed the conversation and opened it up, and if we were having a conversation about harm or about risk, making sure that the conversation was a bit more holistic because other communities were thought about, that really opened for me that our conversation has to broaden. When we talk about multidisciplinary, when we talk about cross section of communities, we need to be thinking about how small businesses are impacted, how rural communities are impacted, how
Yep.
people of color and women and all of these things, not because it's a moral imperative, but the work of doing cybersecurity requires of us to understand the context, to understand the implications, to understand the harm we are trying to mitigate. A technology is shaped by people, it is weaponized by people, it is operated by people, and it lives in a societal context. And if you don't understand all those pieces, the people, the context, all of those things, you are missing so much of the threat landscape. And that is what I focus on in every organization. And all of the work I do is bringing that holistic perspective. That's why human-centered security is so important.
Right.
You can fiddle with the technology a million different ways. But if you don't recognize the context in which it operates, the people who brought what data to it, the people who are operating it, the constraints of the organization it sits in, layers on layers of geopolitical, social, and other contexts.
God, you speak
are
my language.
missing
Say it
so
again.
much.
Geopolitical. Wait, one more time. Say it.
Oh,
Speak
yeah,
my
that is
language.
your love
Geopolitical.
language.
One more time. Right. Okay. Sorry. I got caught off center. Right. But it's true. And I know Flavius, and I want to get Julie for a moment, but Flavius, you can relate to that, of course, right? You have to understand people. I mean, basically, and how they think, right? How they operate, how, right? I mean, you have to. You can't. That's what
Absolutely.
you're saying.
And I guess it is complex. And some, at least in our industry, share this view that, hey, people are unpredictable and you cannot map attitudes and behaviors and risk. But that's not really true. We see this across the world, across cultures, across languages. We all have the same basic needs and the same reactions. So what do you think happens when you're going to block someone and you're going to impact their productivity? You don't need to be an expert in behavioral science to guess they're probably going to find a workaround, and that may introduce additional risk, right? So, hey, it is complex, but science and technology allows us to map it all out, to measure it, and figure things out, and then feed that back to the security team, and then use that insight perhaps to build better security that actually works for the people, for the organization. It is complex, but also I think it's really, really exciting. And I think that's the biggest opportunity we have to deliver more cyber resilient organizations and a more cyber resilient society. So
With good people.
Yeah.
Very seriously. But so on that note, Camille, did I cut you off? By the way, there's a lot going on right now.
Feel
Just want to
free
make
move
sure.
on to Julie. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I want to talk to Julie for a moment. So, Julie, your journey is different, but it's equally fascinating. I mean, from NSA to Defense Department, NSA, research, leading human-centered work at NIST. But I mean, let's fill in your sort of resume. I don't mean the necessarily career arc, but who are the early shapers of your life, maybe personally and professionally, and what early forces shaped your lenses, right? And drew you, and how'd you end up in this space?
Yeah. I mean, like Camille, I mean, my parents really were the early shapers of who I am today. Just, really instilling in us a sense of service to others, integrity, hard work. Whether I was, my first part-time job was a cashier at Kmart,
Kmart, oh my
or
God.
working in a seafood market, or being a salaried career job. Working, doing your best, putting your best effort forward. Um, really try to put yourself in other people's shoes. Deep sense of empathy, definitely, especially from my mom. We're the type that we cry at all movies and TV shows, all, anything sentimental, but, try to put yourself trying to understand other people's situations, and cutting them some slack, because you just don't know what's always going on. And so, how I got into computer science, honestly, it was more out of practicality. I was actually more interested in history and in English and kind of the human side of things, ironically, but I wanted to major in something where I could find a job. Because I, me and my parents sacrificed a lot to get so that I could go to college, and I wanted to, be able to make a decent living afterwards. So I went into computer science, and I ended up working at the National Security Agency. My dad was a public servant there for many years, and so it was a natural decision to me to want to serve my country and to help people and make a positive impact. And so going into the civil service was a way for me to do that. And so then I fell into cybersecurity. Back when I went to school, there weren't cybersecurity majors.
Right.
You learned that in school. You learned it on the job, and that's what I did. And I had some great opportunities there. I was on the NSA Blue Team for many years. So we did vulnerability assessments. We'd be invited to different organizations and try to find all the problems on their network, and try to help them fix those and give them recommendations for fixing those. And, I wrote a lot of security guidance as well. And one of the things that I learned very early on that really, I think, contributed to me kind of shifting my career focus later was that people were really struggling with security. And we looked at it more at an organizational level. So we had a lot of interactions with the system administrators. And, it was easy to blame them. Maybe, they don't know what they're doing, or they're incompetent, but that was not the case the majority of the time. There were a lot of non-technical reasons why people were struggling. And sometimes it was a usability issue with the technology. Sometimes it was a lack of awareness or training. Sometimes it was a policy issue or some kind of other organizational constraint that was kind of getting in the way of them being able to enact some of these security mitigations. And so, one of the things that I learned early on is when we were on site and talking to these system administrators to really try to get to the root cause, to listen to what they had to say, to try to, again, practicing that empathy, not just assuming that, the worst in someone, trying to really understand, like, how they got to that point or what they need so that they could improve security in the organization. And then and during that time, I mean, one of the pivotal mentors that I had was Tony Sager. I don't know if you all know who he is. He was a couple levels above me, but a fantastic leader. Still keep in touch with him today. And he was very much about building consensus.
Right.
So when we had our own security guidance, and there were all these other government organizations that had kind of competing security guidance, and he really brought us all together, in that collaboration, listening to what other people have to say. He had a saying that the community in agreement and us 80% happy is better than the community not in agreement and us 100% happy. So it was kind of like letting go of that control and doing what was best for kind of the greater good.
I wanted to just kind of, for a moment, ask Flavius, like, how do you feel about all this? I mean, this is talking about really speaking your language in many ways, speaking in different ways, right? People, you're basically, I mean, throughout this conversation, we're talking about how different people have to, excuse me, I don't know what's wrong with me, and I can't talk. But Julie was talking about, right? There's different reasons why people are, whether they're making mistakes or whatever it is, and that sort of speaks to your heart, Flavius.
Absolutely. I was smiling probably at that point because
Yes.
Angela, that's exactly where she started. Administrators, human-computer interaction, and similar findings. But then also, I love what your former boss said there, Julie. And I was thinking, how can we apply that when we communicate security policies to people? Hey, perhaps the Cs of the security team, they have to give a little, and perhaps we achieve 80% happy and consensus, right? But right now, what we're seeing, there's a lot of it feels like there's two sides. Even within organizations, there's a lot of conflict. The user on the one hand, and the security team. And like, even if you think about phishing simulations, right, it breaks trust. Many of the security teams are thinking, right, we're gonna catch them. We're gonna phish them, and then we're gonna catch them when they click, and then we'll show them. They gotta do the training. They're just not good enough. They gotta get better. We'll show them. We'll catch them. And literally, they try to be devious with those phishing simulations and send them out. And sometimes they really go too far. And we've had cases. We've probably seen it in the news. When they impersonated the World Health Organization during COVID, and they were sending messages out to people when there was a lot of distress and panic. And on the other hand, the users think, oh my God, security, they just don't get it. They're just blocking us everywhere, the business prevention department. And so, literally, I was listening to you, Julie, and I was wondering, How can we apply this to the messages we get out? And even working with the security teams we support. These are some of the best security teams out there, FTSE Fortune 100. So I'm learning. Thank you very much.
No, I completely agree, Flavius. I mean, that's a lot of the work that we're currently doing, or that we've been doing the last few years, is trying to get the word out to the security community about sometimes some things that they're doing that may not be super helpful. We'll put it that way, and maybe they don't know, and it's not. This is not blame on security professionals at all. They're not trained in this. And that's and they're not always afforded the opportunity to learn more about that human element. So how do we help them? I kind of getting back to my story a little bit, just as a segue, I became very curious about some of the reasons behind the science behind what I was seeing in the field. And I remember I read Bruce Schneier's essay, The Psychology of Security. And that was like the game changer for me, because he talked a lot about how people perceive risk, and a lot of the kind of the cognitive biases and the mental shortcuts that we take to make decisions and make sense of our world, and all these beautiful things that make us human, right? And how that impacts how people interact with cybersecurity. And it just made me want to learn more. And that's why I ended up going back to school to study human-centered computing, to get that more of that knowledge about the science. And then I started doing research from there, and then ended up going over to NIST to work on it full time. But it was really motivated by seeing those struggles in the field, and wanting to help security professionals do their jobs more effectively, and
Right.
more happily, with more satisfaction as well.
You have had an interesting trajectory, right? I mean, and I said I feel kind of similar because I don't really ever fit in a box either, and I like that. But it's I think it makes people very interesting, right? You're an interesting person. I also feel like, and I could be wrong because I like to speculate sometimes, but I'm doesn't mean I'm right. But you're good at maneuvering with people, right? You know how to, you can be around a lot of different kinds of people, and you feel comfortable. Am I wrong about that? That's at least been always my assessment when we've communicated. And the reason I say that is because systems don't change easily, obviously, right? Corporate world, government. I mean, it's it's so different. But in your experience, because you've been in all those areas, what do you think? What does it really take to move the needle? And I say not just national security, cybersecurity, but also in general. What's the trick,
Yeah.
Camille?
I mean,
In
some
your
of it
book,
is those
right?
those skills that Julie was talking about earlier, like
Yeah.
empathy and really thinking
Yeah.
about people and understanding the stakeholders. I make impact in systems and change the trajectory of a big ship that usually it takes a lot to turn, because I make sure that I understand what each stakeholder is aiming to achieve. What are their priorities? What are their goals? What are their constraints? What are their opportunities? And I use that to find the common ground and use that to move in a direction. And I can hear that in what Flavius and Julie were talking about as well, right? One of the most frustrating statements for me is people are the weakest link. We are the security practitioners.
Yeah, I like the high
Yes,
five too.
we are the ones that are supposed to do the hard work of understanding the systems, implementing the constraints, implementing the guardrails. But usability is a factor, just like it is with tooling in general and with a product that you roll out. The user interface matters. Thinking about the context it's in matters. And it's our job to do the heavy lifting, but we do have to think about it in that context so people can do their portion. And I think that's why in this moment I've been so focused on what might be the hardest part is getting individuals more engaged on this work. I actually think changing things in big systems where people have some understanding of one component part or another and some investment in a larger shared mission can actually be easier. You might have to change your outcome a little bit. You might have to take it step by step rather than moving straight to the goalpost. But like there is an opportunity for you to shift the trajectory of an organization or an entity towards that North Star if you understand where everybody aligns. The hard part with people in this space in particular is the cybersecurity community has done a great job of scaring everyone. And so between the taxonomy problems that Julie was talking about, the cognitive dissonance that happens because people are afraid, and the lack of usability, people kind of opt out. But I think there's a real opportunity to make people feel empowered and to engage a little bit and not be cybersecurity practitioners, but to do their part and think about it much like they think about their physical security. They trust the police to monitor the streets. They trust the fire department to put out fires, but they still put a lock on their door. They still close their garage door at the end of the day. They might still get an alarm system and really kind of gauge the controls that they put in place based on their risk tolerance and the life they live and what they want to protect. And I want people to get to the place where they are doing that in their digital lives too.
It's called not living in fear, right? But at the same time, not being naive, right? Being street smart enough, but not always turning your head every second, right? I mean, that could offend. You're right. That's physical security. So let me ask you a question, though, real quick. Is what? Yeah, I don't need. I don't know. I want to like stump you. I'm kidding, but do you have a specific story where maybe you had to shake things up? If you're frustrated, right, in a situation, you get people to kind of see if something they're not seeing.
Yeah. So at Google, one of my jobs was to set all the security priorities for the organization across every product and business unit. So everything from marketing and legal to Android and Google Photos. And so you'd set, let's say 5 priorities for the year. But of course, there were some that were very product focused. There were some additions that were business led because Google is a federated organization. So there's a central security team, but each team and business unit then has their own security priorities. And so I set some really ambitious goals that went to the board. And I was trying to get all of these security leaders to do these 5 things. Let's go. And the hard part is most security leaders are under-resourced, whether that's people power or money or hours in the day. There is some resource constraint. And I had to figure out for each of these like 35, 40 business units, what was the value proposition in making this investment? Where did I actually need to pivot and decide that, 2 out of these 5 don't apply to you or might be deprioritized as it compares to some of your other priorities, and create a framework that communicated up how we were moving towards those goals, why there were deviations, and did so in a way that was aligned to the truth of each of those business units. So for example, security is a hallmark of Android as a product. So it's a lot easier for them to make an investment, for them to get the people to do some things and to meet certain benchmarks. Whereas marketing does not have an actual dedicated security resource. There's a person who wears half a hat who's kind of guiding some things and begging, borrowing, stealing from the central security team to do things. And telling a story about progress from each of those through a way that was true to the work that they were doing was really important. And so that was a time that I had to really leverage all of the priorities across different types of businesses, different stakeholder communities to really steer the ship in a direction. And we were successful.
Amazing. And so let me move to Julie for a moment. So you've done a lot of things, from briefing generals, you're talking about to translating to practitioners. So you learned that influence wasn't about authority, right? Tailored communication. So didn't you once, I could have sworn you told us this when we spoke to you, that you once briefed a 2-star general by tying cyber hygiene directly to their mission success or something? Didn't you explain something like that?
I don't remember that specific story, but I have briefed. I have briefed.
No,
I have briefed generals. Yeah. No, no. We have. I think, Camille's comment about understanding context and kind of the challenges and the needs of different organizations is so important. And what I again learned very early on in my days doing vulnerability assessments is we would give at the end of our assessment, our on-site assessment, we would give an out briefing to someone high up. So it could be a general, it could be a colonel, lieutenant colonel, whoever was kind of in charge of the network. And there were some of my coworkers would go deep into the technical weeds about things, and you can see people's eyes glazing over. Right. And so I learned that I had to really read the audience and tailor things to understand what was important to them. What was the level of detail I should be giving to them? What did they need to be able to make a decision? And even, my team over time, we really evolved the report that we would deliver. So we would deliver a report some weeks after we left. And it used to be this kind of like 100 pages of all of these details about here's every vulnerability and here's every system. And it was very much geared toward the technical people. But we weren't gearing it toward the people that actually made the decisions about whether or not these things got fixed in the first place, that allocated the resources. And so we started, again, kind of, having more of an executive summary type of thing and trying to communicate more in the terms that resonated with our audience, which were those decision makers. Prioritizing, Camille talked about that too. As security folks, we tend to think everything's important. You should do it all, right? You should do all, there's 100 controls, you should do them all. That's not reasonable to give to an organization, especially if they're kind of starting from square one. And so prioritizing, here are the big things that'll get you the most bang for your buck, that's going to protect your mission the most. And like you said, Fred, tying it to the mission, right? Sure. If you don't do this, here's potential consequences, not just, bad consequences, but if you fix this, here's the good things that can come of it. So looking at things from both sides as well.
I saw Flavius smiling, so I'm going to pass you. But before I do that, what I find most interesting about this conversation, really every conversation in life, is always goes back to people, right? If we all could figure out how to communicate with people in everything, I'm saying, you guys are talking about putting yourself in other people's shoes, right? Understanding what their needs are. And it just makes me laugh because we could be having a conversation about babies, right? It's always I think 9 out of 10, like 99% of the issues in life are because people can't communicate. And if we could, right, and we can learn to do that, we would solve, most problems, right, Flavius? And now I'm moving it to you because I saw you smiling when Julie was talking.
Smiling because Julie mentioned 100 security controls, and I think perhaps you're referring to the ISO 27002 standard. And I was thinking, well, and still over 100 controls. I've seen this both from within and from outside. Compliance, right? Compliance is about checking boxes, those 100 controls, passing audits. You get your ISO certification, good. Security is about surviving cyber attacks. And too often CISOs, and I guess Camille, you made this point as well, even inside organizations such as Google, well-resourced organizations, often security leaders find themselves unable to pursue anything more than compliance. They have to build a defensible position, at least on paper, and yet their organizations remain compliant and still insecure. So then I'm wondering, and this is the question here, if 100 controls is a lot, and even achieving that compliance is quite a stretch, then perhaps the idea of human-centric security is not just theory. Perhaps that's about survival. And I'm wondering, can the CISO afford not to bring people into the fight?
No,
I was waiting for somebody. I was waiting for
thought it was
somebody to answer.
Camille. I thought that was
No,
Camille.
I don't think it was rhetorical, right, Flavius? No, I think no. I was waiting.
No, we can't afford to ignore people.
Right? Was it rhetorical? Perhaps.
Right. Maybe it was.
No, I mean, I'm saying that I think that they can't afford for it to be rhetorical, especially not in this moment. As AI accelerates everything, as agentic AI changes the very nature of what you need to be looking for in your environment as a security professional, there is so much more surface area for an organization to think about. And so to ignore the people aspect of that would be a huge miss in this environment. It will be both the greatest opportunity and an opportunity for weakness, a challenge if it is ignored. It also demands an investment in security by design. Security teams need to be brought in earlier. And that is the part that I think we also need to change fundamentally as part of rethinking security and really honing in on where we've had gaps traditionally. Yes, people, but also we need to bring our security teams in earlier so that we have designed systems, designed products, designed tools that contemplate security by design or by default, such that we can close some of that surface area up front and they serve us better. And we've actually thought about the people up front. There's a lot of paradigm shifts that need to happen. And there's some great work happening across the industry to kind of push some of these things, but it brings those two things to mind. Security leaders cannot ignore people, and we need to be more involved as security practitioners early in the development of an organization, a process, a tool, a product, anything.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree. Bring security teams in early, and then security teams need to think people human-centric, right? Because there's this concept in cybersecurity which I think has been, well, interpreted in different ways, but the concept of zero trust. Certain security teams believe that means we cannot trust any of our users. They're going to make mistakes. It's our job to block, prevent, whatever, right? And then yes, you bring them in early, but if they bring that mindset, that's not very productive. And perhaps if when they do that, next time the business considers bringing the security team early, someone's going to think twice. So I think change needs to happen on both sides here, and there should really only be one side. But hey, cyber is a new discipline, right? The lawyers, you mentioned wanting to be a lawyer, Camille, right? Or the doctors, the accountants. They've been doing their jobs for centuries, for millennia, perhaps. But cyber is really new, so we're all trying to figure this out together. So empathy, yes, absolutely. We're working on it.
I wanted to ask Camille real quick that she started to talk about AI for a moment. I heard you go in there in direction a bit, so I wanted to ask you. It's kind of, I guess, paint us a picture of where the AI cyber landscape is right now, and I guess what's the biggest hurdle to like truly effective government?
Cybersecurity practitioners have been using AI automation for quite some time, so it's not new.
Right.
But the landscape is changing quite rapidly. A lot of companies are contending with whether and how they use AI systems as a part of their security operations. Do they deploy agents? How? What are the boundaries? What happens if the agent behaves in a way that they don't want or is unexpected? So there are some really interesting and complex challenges on the horizon. I think that the opportunity that presents is for some really creative and innovative practitioners to think outside the box about like, what does security look like as we move forward? But what I have seen is a real convergence between security and trust and safety, and this need to really focus on the behavioral aspects of a system, of a person as a part of the security discipline. And we can learn a lot from trust and safety in doing that. And so as agents in particular become a insider threat for all intents and purposes, right? They've got access, they can move around your network, they are doing something on your behalf, but they might, whether through intent or just because, some anomalous behavior, do something that is not wanted or works counter to the goals that you have as an organization. You have to think about how you determine that happened, create the accountability frameworks, attribute it to either a person or a tool, and figure out how you mitigate that kind of a threat going forward. So the cybersecurity landscape has a lot of, from the defense side, work to do around like leveraging the tools effectively and then safeguarding themselves. I think there are really three areas. So there's that. How do you leverage the tools? There's how are the tools being leveraged against you? And right now, they're not being used at the scale that I think that people thought they would at this point, but they can be used and have been used to have more sophisticated social engineering attacks. They can be used to scale attacks, that kind of thing. And then, how do you secure AI systems themselves? How do you make sure that, these tools that are going to have so much data about you and have so much access are in and of themselves secure? So that adversarial use, the use in defense, and securing those systems are going to be really big areas of work for every cybersecurity practitioner moving forward.
So we're going to jump to, talk a little bit more about where human-centered cybersecurity goes from here, right? I think it's kind of, we're seeing a lot. I mean, Flavius, all of you guys are ingrained in this, and so, it's become a buzzword, I think now, right? A lot of people are saying this word now. I don't think they even know what it means, right? But I think all
we don't know either.
Well, no, but I mean, right.
There's no consistent meaning. That's why we need Julie.
What does it mean?
Yeah,
All right, let's go
we're
around.
working on it. We're working on
This
it.
is a great, actually, here we go. You know what? Why don't we go around? What does it mean? I want to hear everybody's definition of human. This is interesting here.
Oh, God.
I just want to hear Julie.
Oh, well,
I don't care who takes
it's
this
funny
one.
because because we don't even have a consistent definition. So how I usually describe it to people, it's putting people at the forefront in cybersecurity. It's considering it's considering human needs and motivations and behaviors when we're designing and implementing cybersecurity policies and processes and technologies with an end goal of improving security outcomes. Improving these people's interactions with cybersecurity, so that we have better security outcomes for everyone.
I need judges, by the way. What happened? We're full of judges. I'm just kidding. But anyway, who's next?
At the end there, Julie, perhaps security and business outcomes, I think they go hand in hand. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes yes, you give a little for a bit more security. But sometimes can be good for business too. So perhaps it's both.
I do think good security is good for business outcomes, but I don't know that I would put that in the definition of human-centered security. I hope that it's bigger than that. But I hope that companies adopt it at the same time. I would agree with Julie's definition. I think she articulated it really well. And I think the nuances of that actually depend on the context in which you're applying it, which is why I kind of like it at the level at which she articulated it. Because in an organization, to Flavius's point, business value will be a part of that calculus. And I think to have business value, you need to understand your end customer, your user, and the operators that help facilitate you getting there. So that is why the people part is going to be important and yield business value. But in societal context, and when you think about how the government should think about human-centered security, business value is not exactly at the forefront, right? It's about serving the constituents and the citizens and making sure that the systems that you have developed in service of them operate consistently in service of them and are secure in doing so, and then continue to protect their interests in these other ways, like securing their data, et cetera. So I really like Julie's definition for that point, but to Flavius's point, as applied, it could have a business value dimension.
I like OutThink's definition. Actually, what I'm trying to remember this.
You want to hear it?
Working with human nature. Working with human nature rather than against it. Is that something? Did I make that up?
I didn't say that, but I think that's part of it. That's part of it as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
What we believe is that we're seeing this increased reliance on digital services for serious things like education, healthcare, managing your finances, your job, all of the above. And so we believe our world is going digital, and then our mission is to secure a digital life everywhere. And how we do that is by we're working with private organizations, we're working with governments as well, industry bodies. So we're encouraging everyone to put the human at the heart of security operations. And I guess that's how your definition started, Julie, as well. So I was nodding there. And then when it comes to human risk management, this one's a bit, sometimes people believe, well, this one's got a bit of a negative connotation. They're thinking, what are you implying? People are a vulnerability that needs to be risk managed away? Far from it. What we mean by that is, hey, look, you have people using computers, sharing, processing data. Attackers are aware of that, and they are going after your people. And so what is the risk? How vulnerable, which of your employees are most vulnerable? We've seen this in the data. By now, we've seen over 10 million users on the platform and over 1 billion human risk signals. There's about 8% of employees or users, if you wanna call people that actually are responsible for 80% of security incidents. So hey, you're a CISO. Where's your 8%? Who is your 8% most vulnerable to cyber attacks? And then, yes, it's your job to make those people a bit more cyber resilient, to put in the required security controls around those colleagues, to keep them and the organization safe. So that is the human risk conversation we're having. You gotta be able to identify, understand, and manage that risk. It's a real risk. And we're advocating for a more data-driven approach rather than security leaders get around the table and they'll decide people need more training on phishing and on passwords, and then they go ahead and they dish out a couple of modules, and the videos are funny, right? I don't know. I've been obsessing with this for 10 years. I'm a bit mean. We do a lot more than that. But
Yeah, I mean that really resonates with me, Flavius. And I think it's important for people to understand that when someone's vulnerable, it's not necessarily because of like something bad that they did or an error that they make. It could just be the role that they have in the organization, the type of data that they handle, like their attack surface in general. And I think so. One of the things that we also forget a lot is that risk can be positive as well. You can take positive risks. And I think we tend to, in the security community, we tend to think of humans as either a problem to be controlled, and you touched on this before, Flavia. So we're basically trying to constrain them so that they don't have to, interact with anything or touch anything or mess anything up or make an error. And to some degree, we do want to remove some of the burden that we've put on people, right? Like let computers do what computers do well. But we're never going to completely relieve get rid of that human in the loop. And then the other approach has been kind of humans as a problem to consider. So that's where we get security awareness training. So trying to understand people's behaviors and their attitudes, and like that's all fine, and you need that. And usability, like that's great. Like usability is super important. Again, just a piece of it. What I think that we also need to think about in the community, we have not done a very good job of, is how do we enable people? How do we think of as the humans as a positive contributor to security? So again, reframing, so it's not always that people are the weakest link, users are the weakest link, but that they can be this powerful partner, right? There's a lot of things that people are really good at. How do we leverage that to be kind of our human sensors within our organization that can identify potential issues? How do we help people, empower people? Again, I've heard that term a lot today. How do we empower people so that they can be kind of those active participants? So I think that there needs to be this reframing. It's not just about preventing human error.
Yeah, Julie, couldn't agree more. And the concept of human sensors, that's very dear to my heart. And I guess the way you achieve that is you engage people. Security cannot just happen to them or be done to them. You engage people, and every opportunity we have to perhaps share a bit of information, even if that's just security awareness training, that also needs to be doubled as an opportunity to learn from those people. So that's how we've built the product. Everything we put out, there's a question or there's a field where someone can type something in. Hey, wait a minute. When I'm doing this or when I'm seeing that, how about this? We use machine learning, natural language processing to surface all sorts of insights. We're effectively helping activate people as a network of human sensors, and people are still better than machines. They still have their spider senses. They can tell when something is off. Email security filters sometimes are being bypassed, but someone that's actually engaged and switched on can look at an email and go, wait a second, just a second. Let me call someone. Let me reach out to my manager, the security team, and then that's awesome. They report an attack before it could have reached other people in the organization. The security operations team can take action, can pull that email from inboxes. Yeah, we see a lot of this happening as well. So huge positive.
Camille, you often say that you said it. I've seen this around different ways. Tech isn't a code problem, right? It's systems, it's people, it's power, it's design problem. And Julie, obviously, your work at NIST proves that the human side of cyber is certainly still radically underdeveloped. So, first of all, I guess the question. Let me start with you, Camille. Is like, where are we getting this all wrong? I mean, you saw, right? I mean, you've seen it. You've seen it. The White House, federal programs failed. Where they treated people as afterthoughts. Let's just start there. You've seen a lot of things in both in Google and the in the White House, and so what are we doing wrong, and how can we fix it?
Yeah, I think people think the technical problems are easier. The technical
Right.
piece of the puzzle doesn't have to contemplate the differences and messiness and uniqueness of all of the different people and contexts in which the technology operates, but you can't get a full picture and you can't fully leverage even those technical controls and those technical mitigations unless you contemplate those things. But we focus on that because it scales better. It's easier to train, it's easier to identify, it's just easier. And we have to get away from that. We do. And even in that being easier, it is tough work. We do tough work,
Right.
but it must be tougher still because we should contemplate the people, the processes, and all of the context that sits around the technology for us to do our jobs most effectively. And I think that's the work that it sounds like all three of us have been talking about, and that the work that must be done is to remind security practitioners that you cannot look at the technology in isolation. It doesn't live that way. It doesn't work that way. And so how do we build it into the systems, build it into the programs, build it into security as a core principle? And some of that starts with how we train on computer science and on cybersecurity and on all of these things, and make them more multidisciplinary. They need to be interdisciplinary studies where you are pulling these things together. I don't need everybody to be a, cyber psychology expert,
Right.
but you need to recognize that people are a core part of this work enough to know when you need to call in a cyber psychology expert. Just like if you are a forensic specialist, you're not claiming to be a policy expert. You know that you need to call the policy team at the point at which that is what you need to change or tweak to get the outcome you desire. So we need to get people thinking more critically and more holistically about the landscape and the tools at their disposal and the skill sets that they should be leveraging to get a handle on the problem and the solutions, right? There's a lot of innovation to be had if we can actually put people at the center of the work that we're doing.
How many years were you in the White House?
2.
2 years. Do you think that from when you first started there, and then when you finished, when you left, that there was any success in moving the needle a little bit? Well, yeah. So tell me, you have
I mean, the
any
nice thing
interesting
is I
story?
came in under Chris Inglis, and he too
Yeah.
was a big proponent of people process technology, right? One of the reasons he brought me in was to really be able to make sure that the people part did not get lost, and so that we could even write a strategy that complemented the cybersecurity strategy to focus in on people. So it was an environment where that was at the core of the work from the beginning. And I think the industry is slowly in pockets waking up to it. Now, the implementation isn't consistent, and the level of care they put into that piece of the equation differs. And, whether they've adopted it at the beginning of a product development process or life cycle versus if they're kind of still trying to bolt on thinking about people at the very end and tweaking a thing that never contemplated a person. All of those things is fragmented and makes the industry still seem as if they haven't adopted the focus on people wholesale. But there is work that is being done. There are organizations and companies and universities and all of these things that have put this at the center and are slowly making those changes. We just need it to be more pervasive.
So Flavius, did I see you want to say something or no? I was watching. No, okay. So I'm
Yeah,
good.
just
Okay.
in agreement, violent agreement.
Violent agree. Oh my God, you're shaking. I saw you. Okay, so but Julie, seriously. So I know NIST guidance has been increasingly about right how people behave under stress, right? So it's not about just checking a box. So you are leading the shift from we just kind of been talking about this awareness to behavior alignment, right? So I mean, tell us a bit about that.
It's very interesting. There's an interesting debate about behavior change. When I talk to other people that work in this space, and we tend to, again, in the security community, we tend to focus everything on we want to change people's behaviors, and we do want to help people so that they can make better decisions both in their professional life and their private life, no matter where they are. But I think we rely too much on security awareness training to change people's behaviors. We think that we've given them the training, that's going to change their behavior, when we're not addressing all of the things that's making it difficult for them to make these good security decisions in the first place, when we're not addressing the usability, we're not addressing the policies and how that impacts people, and is it making it more difficult for them to do their job. Flavius, you mentioned workarounds, right? Like when we make things hard for people, they're going to try less secure workarounds. So we need to really think about that. But also, as humans, we're going to be as people, we're going to be human. Okay, we have human nature. We are not always going to be able to make the right decision. I could get anyone probably to click on a phishing email under the right circumstances. If you're tired, if you're have some personal issues, you're sick, you're rushed, the phishing email is tailored exactly to you. And so we have to take a step back and think about, how do we get cybersecurity to work within the kind of the limitations of human behavior and cognition in the first place, right? So it's not always about getting people to change to support cybersecurity, but the other way around. And I think that's kind of missing right now, is that we want to form people a certain way, but we don't want to kind of adjust everything else so that it accounts for the errors that people are going to make, the mistakes that they're inevitably going to make, because none of us are perfect. We can all make those errors or have poor judgments at some given point in time.
So,
and Fred, this is where I really want to jump in.
No, please.
Julie's so right. When we say behavioral change, we're just placing the problem with the people. Hey, you have to change your behavior. Once you've changed your behavior, we're all good. We're going to be secure, but you have to change your behavior. It's your problem. And our scientists have shown through decades of research that people have a limited compliance budget. Once that budget is exhausted, piling on more training, more policy just becomes counterproductive. And then we've seen this in the data too. The non-compliant behaviors, if we want to call them that, those behaviors don't come from a lack of knowledge. Instead, they're driven by impact on productivity, security control friction, security that slows people down, and requirements that just don't fit into the daily workflows. So then there's two jobs to be done. One, make people as cyber resilient as possible, right? That's a tall order. We want them to make better choices, and there's a bit of work we got to do there. And the second job to be done is build workable, sustainable security. It's got to be done. You do both, there you go. Good things happen, but don't just leave it with users thinking that we're gonna train them and they're gonna change their behaviors and everything's gonna be good.
And volume of training doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be good either, does it?
You hit the compliance button, people are just going to click through to get to the end and start ignoring security advice and messages and right click, move to junk.
Well, I think we're close to, what time is it? Oh, I think we're close. Anybody else want to just chime in here on anything that we've been talking about? It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anybody ever see that? Like Friday afternoon school. Bueller. Okay, well, that's fine. We can. It's but I will just ask a couple more things, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll certainly do this again. But both you, Camille and Julie, let's say you've hacked the quote institutions, right? That were never built with you in mind because the institutions were made up of pretty much men, right? In those days. So, and until recently, probably it's only slowly changing. But if you could leave one message to the next wave of women in cyber, because it's a new wave, you guys didn't really come in with any kind of, there was no paved road. So now there's starting to be one. But, so I said, if you can leave a message to the next wave of women in cyber, or really to any leader building what's next, what would that be? I don't mean to stump anybody, but I mean, it's.
For me, it's embrace your unique perspective. All of the things that you use to analyze a problem, to creatively attack a solution, all of those things are what we need in this space, right? To truly understand the issues. And when you combine that with the people next to you, the other folks in the organization, you're bound to come up with something that's really strong, whether that is a stronger understanding of the threat or a richer understanding of the opportunity. And so don't be afraid to bring that different lens into a conversation and to elevate a perspective that you're not hearing in the conversation. They might decide to shelve it because it's not relevant for what they're doing, but it's never not valuable. So embrace that. And if you do, it kind of frees you from this expectation of needing to sound like everybody else or bring the same ideas, or that's not what I would have said. And hopefully it gives you some comfort as you navigate the space.
It's funny. I don't go, Julie, one moment, but you just said something. It's, people are always. I'm around a lot of people. I see people all the time and always questioning themselves. You just said, shouldn't I have said that? I was with somebody yesterday, and it doesn't matter who it was, but I was doing an interview, and great person, smart, and I noticed that people always do that. Well, I'm going to question myself tomorrow about what I said, but like I don't ever feel that way. But I guess that's a human condition, guys.
I think so.
Yeah. So on that side note, Julie, what would you say?
I mean, I think Camille said it very well. I mean, I would definitely give that advice. I mean, I would tell um, women and honestly anyone that isn't a stereotypical, cybersecurity person, or doesn't think that they are, doesn't look like a stereotypical cybersecurity professional. I would tell them that you belong in cybersecurity. You uh, you have, again, like Camille said, you have your own unique perspectives. There will always be someone that is better than you at something, but you have your own strengths to bring. They might be different, but they're still valuable.
Wow, I like this. Is a very great conversation, very forward thinking. I really like it. It's cybersecurity was not like this when 7 years ago when I started in this field. I was like, what is going? I'm a very empathetic person. I was scared of some of these people, but no, it was very right. It was very people weren't having these conversations back then, so this is good. But okay, on that note, Flavius, I know that this entire conversation has strikes particularly close to home for you, so. You want any final thoughts for you?
Well, thank you, Fred. And thank you very much, Julie and Camille, for such an inspiring conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Hearing your stories actually reinforces why we do what we do at OutThink, to empower people, not to overload them, to build resilience, not just compliance. And if there's one thing I would leave the audience with is this: engaging and empowering people is not optional anymore. It's the only way forward, and probably it's the highest opportunity we have in cyber. That's my closing remark. There you go.
All right, that's good. You want to say it one more time?
Which
I interrupted you. Say the last one more time. I'm serious.
Well,
I like to make you double quote. I always do it. I want to see if you can remember it again. No, I know that's why you don't need that. It's okay.
What did I say?
Oh,
There's one thing. That part. If there's one thing I want to leave the audience with, is this: engaging and empowering people is not optional. It's the only way forward, and it's probably the biggest opportunity we have in cyber.
All right. I just wanted you to say it again. So anyway, on the last note, I'm just curious. Tell me something interesting, guys. It's like anybody reading a good book, music. What's your favorite, Camille? Kind of music? What's your favorite musician?
Beyonce, my favorite.
Not favorite. I don't know. What do you? What would you listen to right now when you get off here? Like, what is going to be the like? What's going to be the music? Like, a wake up, something to wake you up, or what? No, I'm kidding. For what?
Well, I have more meetings after this. I actually have to,
Oh, you do? So
run.
we're done. Okay, you're like, I gotta go. All right, we're done. Okay, so we'll talk about that next time. We'll talk about your book. Okay, Julie, it was great to see you all. Flavius, always a pleasure. I'm so glad we'll do this again, and hopefully it won't be 5 months from now again. But it was great to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry that it took so long to pull this together. We'll see you guys soon. And of course, this is the Engage and Secure podcast brought to you by OutThink. I'm, of course, your host, Fred Menachem. And until next time, stay secure, stay ahead, and stay inspired. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us on Engage and Secure, where conversations inspire action and collaboration drives innovation. Powered by OutThink, we're dedicated to transforming how leaders address cyber-human risk, paving the way for a safer digital future. Don't miss our upcoming episodes and roundtable conversations with industry trailblazers. Subscribe, share, and join us as we redefine what's possible in cybersecurity. Until next time, stay secure and stay inspired.